Anyway, my name is Steve Szeghi. I'm a professor of economics at Wilmington College in Wilmington, Ohio. I live in Cincinnati. It's about 50 miles away from where I work. Carpool a lot to get there, and typically go up between 3 to 5 days a week for, I guess, 32 weeks a year. But I've been teaching economics at Wilmington since 1987, and I'm an economist. I teach it all. I teach all the various subject matters in the field at my college. I'm the only economist there. It's a small liberal arts school. But my specialty is ecological economics, social justice economics, and the economics of indigenous peoples as alternative economic systems. So that's what I do in my professional career, and I also have had a class over the last 10 years that I periodically teach, and it's starting to be more routine now, but it's a course called American Indians of the Western States. And I've also taken students on study trips to the wilderness areas, the national parks, and we've also visited the Indian pueblos and various Indian reservations in the American West to sort of like complement that theme. So do professional conferences quite a bit and things like that, but that's me in terms of my professional affiliations. And I work for the environment, I work for social justice, also as an activist to some regard, and do consulting for environmental groups, labor groups, and I've also done it for tribal governments in the United States. So that's me. What draws me here to this conference is the basic theme here of ecology and the economy, and it's really about both and trying to find a balance between the environment and the economy. Human beings can't survive without the economy. The economy is the means by which we provide basic sustenance for the bulk of our peoples. And the economy is also a means by which human beings connect with one another and are able to form relationships with one another. So that should be the purpose of the economy. The purpose of the economy should not be endless acquisition and materialism and consumerism. And that's where the economy kind of gets off course and creates a imbalance between human activity and the rest of nature. And I think it's very, very important to establish that connection and tie to nature of which we're a part, you know. And one of the lies that people hold in their heads is that somehow humanity is separate and apart from nature, but we're not. We need nature. We need that connection to the earth. We need that connection to the elements, to all the various species of animals and plants in order for our own psychic health. And it's very important to have that as a value. And economics isn't always well understood. Part of it is the fault of economists. Part of it is sometimes other people don't take the time to really hear what economists have to say. But at its essence, economics is much more than GDP. You know, it's about everything that holds value to people. And economists don't always do the very best job of fully valuing the things that matter, but the things that truly matter are relationships human beings with one another, human beings with the earth, human beings with nature. Nature holds such tremendous value for us. Like I said, I don't really think we can live fully, be fully human without that connection to nature. So economics has sometimes failed to fully articulate a value for nature to people. You know, of course, we rely on nature for certain what we call raw materials. We look at nature as natural resources and all of that. But the thing is, in a way, that gets us off on the wrong foot, because when you say natural resources, it's though they're just sitting there waiting to be plucked by human beings. But truth be told, everything in nature is already being used by other species, right? So, and I'm not saying we don't have the right to use nature, we do, but we should use it gently, and by touching it, as disturbing it as little as possible, and that's what we really have to work toward. But anyway, economics sort of like fails sometimes to fully value the natural world, and then it also fails to fully value it for itself, because ultimately it isn't just a matter of the value that nature holds for people. What value does it hold for itself? And the other thing that economics sometimes fails to do is to fully take account of its own assumptions. And we assume a lot of things about that we're talking about private goods rather than public goods, and almost everything environmental, whether we're talking about clean air or clean water or biodiversity or protecting against climate change. In economics, we would call these things public goods. And what a public good essentially is if it's there for one person, it's there for everybody. Governments don't make public goods. A good is a public good by its very nature. A public good is a good that once it's available for one person, it's available for others at little or no additional cost, and you can't exclude anybody from the benefits of a public good. So for example, clean air is a public good. If we make the air clean for me, it's going to be clean for you, and we can't exclude you from the benefits of clean air. Same with clean water. And it's standard economics that if something's a public good, the market's not going to provide an adequate amount of it because of what we in economics call the Freerider problem. Therefore, governments have to take steps to ensure the provision of any public good, right? So we can't rely on the marketplace or voluntary efforts for the sake of clean air, for biodiversity, for any of these ecological goods that we talk about. And so ultimately, we have to take collective action, right? This is standard economics, but it kind of gets short shrift in the typical economics course, because the assumption is, oh, we're not talking about public goods here. We're talking about private goods, okay? And there's also a big assumption of no externalities, okay? And an externality is like pollution is what we would call a negative externality, right? Because the producers of the goods or the consumers of the goods aren't bearing the full cost of their consumption or production. These are additional costs for society. So what economics, standard economics teaches is that in the case of externalities, you have to levy either a tax equal to the amount of the negative externality, or if the negative externality is significant enough, just mandate away certain production methods or certain types of consumption, right? But the typical economics course too often sort of like it covers that, but then it's like, oh, well, but our assumption is no externalities. And so students too frequently come away from economics course thinking of externalities as this rare, exceptional thing, when truth be told, there's very little that gets produced, very little that is consumed that doesn't involve significant externalities, typically of the negative variety. I mean, what sort of manufacturing goes on without some sort of pollution, right? What sort of good goes to the store without, the burning of fossil fuels that contribute to climate change? So externalities are massive, and in standard theory, government has to play a role there in managing externalities, but a lot of students never get that. So I see it as my job as a professor, and in everything I do in my research and speaking to people, is to just sort of like bring out these tools in economics that they're standard tools, but they're nonetheless often neglected by the economist.